A limiting reagent is a reactant in a chemical reaction that limits the amount of product that can be formed. This experiment was designed to determine the reactions between two aqueous solutions, copper sulfate and potassium hydroxide. We also determined the limiting reagent at two different ratios of the two solutions.
We used a clamp to hold the burettes full of copper sulfate and potassium hydroxide. We then poured the amount of two solutions as instructed into each test tube. After pouring the correct amount of solution, we then stirred it and let it rests for 15 minutes. After we stirred the solutions, we then noticed that a blue precipitate formed in each one of the test tubes at different heights. We then noticed that copper sulfate was the limiting reagent because it was the reactant we ran out of, and we could only make 5 moles of the precipitate, while we had leftover potassium hydroxide.
The purpose of this experiment was to determine the limiting reagent in a chemical reaction.
The graph depicts that the limiting reactant is copper sulfate because there is only 5 milliliters, and it's the reactant that runs out during the reaction. We noticed some of the data we took could be wrong because the precipitate was separated and we could have messed up when taking the measurements. Also, we could have poured a little more or less of what was told.